Today at Titans and the headquarters of AQ Bevolution, we have a very special guest, my good buddy, and the owner and master brewer of Stillwater, Brian Stillwater Strumke. Please introduce yourself, my man.
As you said, I'm Brian from Stillwater. In 2010, I
always gotta have a beer while you're drinking.
So I took my passion for home brewing and on the road back in 2010. Probably have designed and brewed beers in more countries in the world than maybe anyone. And
could very well be true.
So basically, I've just kind of been gathering information, inspiration from around the world for going on 13 years. Recently, right before the pandemic, I'd moved from New York City to Seattle, Washington. Kind of got stuck there during the pandemic and ended up making a relationship with a native tribe there that built the first ever distillery and a massive brewery on tribal land. So in essence, the new Stillwater home is not even in the United States. So it makes it.
It's in its own country, as it were, right?
Yeah. So which is very Stillwater in itself.
That's pretty cool.
So we just started production there over the past 3 months, and this is the first big drop of the beers that are being produced there, and it's a great situation because now I finally have full control of all production, everything from design of the liquid to design of the labels, and no capacity issues. So it's a new era for the brand, and it's very exciting for me and
very exciting for us.
Hopefully for everyone else.
For all of us, yeah. So most people know they're called nomad or nomadic brewing or gypsy brewing, phantom brewing. There's a lot of different names for it, but essentially it means that you brew in other people's breweries. And you were the American pioneer as far as I know. I think there was some Europeans maybe that had done that, but we're pretty close to the pioneer in the world, in America certainly. And went more places, like you said, brew the beers than anybody.
Yeah,
we know about. Yeah,
I believe that I hit the road harder than anyone else in that circuit, and that was based mainly because my past life as electronic music producer and DJ took me around the world for touring, and I basically missed it. So when I got into beer and started homebrewing, and then eventually was itching to turn that into some kind of career, I didn't want to just build a brewery and just be stuck there. I wanted to travel. So I met an importer who had distribution, at the time just in the northeast of America. And I kind of a spark went off, and it reminded me of I was trying to get back on the road, and my creative outlet was making beer, and I saw the parallels between the music industry and craft beer. When this guy was excited about the beer I was making at home, I thought, oh wow, he could be like my record label. So we could, if I find a studio or a brewery to produce my craft, my products, then I had an outlet for them. So I got on the road, started making beers. And
inspiration, man, light bulbs going off is fantastic. And not many people get to put their dreams into practice. It's pretty amazing you're able to do that. Talk about your home brew a little bit. I think most people in America who are home brewers will brew IPA, or they'll brew, those pale ales or IPAs, essentially. What did you do?
Well, to be honest, a lot of people think it's been articles written about me saying that I was inspired by my travels as a DJ and beers that I was tasting in Europe, but that's not true. In fact, I didn't like beer back then, and I didn't really know craft beer was not really much of a thing in like the early 2000s. It was very few and far between. And I was a DJ. There wasn't serving good beers in clubs. Beer, so I was drinking vodka Red Bulls and shitty ciders. It wasn't until some friends back home in Baltimore took me to a brew pub, a local brew pub that was called the Brewer's Art. And they were the first brew pub in America to specialize in Belgian beers. So I went there with some friends. It was a happy hour. And these
the Brewer's Art is a pretty famous brew pub, and craft beer geeks know of it.
Yeah. So we went there, and I ordered a cider, and they only had like the fancy French cider. It was very expensive, and it was my palate wasn't ready for that. I was like, oh. I was like, I don't like this, and it costs me so much money. And so they're like, you should try the house beers. They're happy hour at half price, and they're quite strong. They're like, it was an Abbey. The Resurrection was an Abbey double, and then they had like a beer called Aussie, which got a cease and desist later on, and that was kind of like a Duvel clone. So these, and I finally tried these, and I was like, oh wow, this is interesting, because all the mass-produced beers at the time just never attracted me. So I started drinking these. I got into Belgian beer. I ended up finding lambics and saisons, and I'm like, this is cool, interesting. And all these beers had different elements and attributes that intrigued me. But at the same time, I always thought I want to take like a little bit from this and a little bit from that and make something new. So eventually, when I got inspired to start brewing myself, my entire goal was to create new beers that don't exist anymore. And Belgium really intrigued me because there's so many, for such a small country, there's like over 300 different styles of beer that have emulated from Belgium. So I kind of felt like Belgium, like if someone started a brewery, they just took free license to make whatever they want. So I did that as a home brewer. If I was going to put all this time and energy into making a product, I wasn't going to just reinvent the wheel and just
make an IPA like everybody else.
Yeah. So I just started, like after my first or second batch of homebrew, which I just followed a recipe to kind of get the groove of it, I just started experimenting. In fact, the way it kind of started was one of the beers I made a porter, and after that I was supposed to make a Belgian style beer, and I messed up and threw the Belgian yeast into the porter, and that inspired me to start hybridizing styles. My house was it's very hot in the summer. It didn't have air conditioning. So if I wanted to brew in the summertime, I had to use a yeast that could deal with hot temperatures. And that's how I ended up in the Saison category. But at the same time, I didn't just want to make another Saison. So I just made up the term American farmhouse ale, and I started taking like classical styles and then switching the yeast up and using the Saison yeast instead of whatever typically was used. Like I'd make an alt beer with Saison yeast. I made a black IPA, Existent, with Saison yeast, and so on and so forth.
So the Saison yeast, some of you may know, some of you may not know that it can be left at higher temperatures without affecting the quality and the flavor. So it was perfect for a guy with no air conditioning in a Baltimore house. And it's also much more durable, right?
Yeah, the
beers last longer. And
yeah, one of the other things about it, I always enjoy dry beverages. So I like a full fermentation and attenuation. So the saison style was always resonated with me very quickly, but I also saw like a lot of opportunity to do other
To
styles.
go in a lot of different
with that.
directions with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, my goal was, when going from homebrewer into commercial production, was to invent new beer, Stillwater beer. I wanted people to just to like come into to approach the products with an open mind. And I think even while the styles may vary a lot, there's usually, I think I have a design kind of hallmark that resonates through most of the beers.
So that the Gypsy Brew beginnings, Brian, you had to be at the whim and at the control of other breweries. And so, as you said earlier, the awesome thing now is because it's your own place, you can do what you want and have perfect control and make the beers how you want. And the result of that is these. These are the new beers that were made by Stillwater at Stillwater.
Yep.
And of those, can we say your favorite?
Yeah, currently, shoegaze.
Quite possibly my favorite.
Named after the